When the heat came with no air conditioning, my grandmother put the kettle on. Every instinct says that's backwards. I've been making this drink every August of my life, and there's a reason doctors are only now catching up to what she already knew. I fill the kettle and set it on the burner. It's August, and the air in the kitchen hangs warm and wet on my arms. Up on the ridge above the creek, there's no breeze. There's no air conditioning either. The elderflowers sit dried in a jar on the shelf, chalky white, faintly sweet, like hay left in the sun. The kettle ticks as it heats. I don't reach for the ice. $25 a bottle. That's what the supplement industry charges for elderflower in a capsule. The jar on my shelf costs nothing. The plant asked nothing of me but a little water and a patch of ground. It asks nothing of you, either. No subscription, no shipping. A handful of dried flowers and a cup of hot water. That's the whole preparation. And what those bottles are trying to replicate is already doing what it has always done, right here in this hollow, before anyone thought to put it in a capsule. Here's the part that sounds wrong until you understand the physics. The hot drink is not the problem. The hot drink is the medicine. Your body has exactly one primary cooling system: sweat. When sweat evaporates off your skin, it pulls heat away from your body with it. About 540 calories of heat for every gram of water that lifts off your skin as vapor. 540 calories per gram. That's the entire engine your body runs on to survive the heat. Everything else, fans, cold cloths, cold drinks, is secondary to that engine. The plants I'm talking about all do the same basic thing. They make you sweat. They open the blood vessels near the skin. They tell the sweat glands to work. The hot liquid itself plays its own role. A warm drink raises your temperature just enough that your body's internal thermostat responds by pushing more sweat to the surface. A cold drink does the opposite. It tightens those blood vessels near the skin and slows the heat from leaving your skin. The exact wrong direction. Think about the last time you felt overheated. Did you reach for ice water? A researcher named Ollie J. at the University of Ottawa confirmed this in 2012. He found that hot beverages triggered a sweat response large enough to produce a net cooling effect, even accounting for the heat of the drink itself. One condition: the sweat has to be able to evaporate. I'll come back to that. His test measured that directly. Hot drink against cold drink, side by side. The hot drink cooled people down faster. But there's a catch that flips that result completely. And if it applies to you, it changes everything I'm about to say. Peppermint works in two completely different ways, and most people confuse them for one. The hot liquid triggers sweating. That is Ollie J's finding, the physics of the thermostat. The menthol in the peppermint does something different. It triggers the same thing in your body that makes you feel cold, the sensation of cold, with no actual drop in temperature. You experience cooling that's real in your body, even with a hot cup in your hands. One effect is physics. The other is perception. Both are real. In 2021, the Nobel Prize Committee gave their prize in medicine to the scientists who first found what creates that cold feeling in the body back in 2002. The woman who kept peppermint growing along the fence line had already confirmed it every July, for decades, with a cup of tea. But here's what nobody tells you about this method. There's one thing that can quietly cancel it out completely, and it's sitting in a lot of medicine cabinets right now. I'll get to exactly what it is before we're done. First, you need to understand why three completely different medical traditions, oceans apart, all landed on the same answer. Appalachian healers knew Boneset, Eupatorium perfoliatum, as one of their strongest tools for a fever that laid a person flat. A physician named Frederick Persch documented in 1812 that the plant had been known to native peoples long before Europeans arrived, used as one of their chief remedies for violent colds and fevers. Andrew Cavender's 2003 survey of Southern Appalachian folk medicine recorded that Boneset was used specifically for sweating a cold out of the body, moving the fever through rather than holding it down. In traditional Chinese medicine, summer heat is treated as something from outside the body that needs to be pushed out. The classical formula for mild heat illness. King Luo Yin, written down in 1798 by the physician Wu Jutong, uses honeysuckle, lotus leaf, and watermelon rind to assist the body's own clearing process. In Ayurvedic medicine, summer is the season when the fire element in the body can overrun the heart. The classical cooling preparation pairs rose with coriander and fennel, taken daily as a preventive before trouble starts. 3 traditions separated by oceans and centuries. All of them said the same thing: work with the sweat. Ask yourself, when you're sick and sweating, do you strip the blankets off or pile more on? Every grandmother who ever wrapped a feverish child in a quilt after hot tea understood the principle before any of them had a word for it. Boneset was on the government's official list of medicines for 80 years. Real, recognized medicine. Something was found about it in 2018 that changes how long you can safely use it. I'll tell you that before I show you how to make it. The preparation I make in August is elderflower. Elderflower is the right plant for daily summer use, gentle enough to drink through the whole season, nothing in it that asks for caution. The first thing you need to know is what to steep it in, what elderflower gives off, the compounds that open the blood vessels near the skin and tell the sweat glands to work, dissolves in water, not oil. That's why water is what we use, and it's part of how this preparation works. Temperature matters more here than in most preparations. You want your water between 185 and 195 degrees Fahrenheit, just below a full boil. You can tell you're there when the water is steaming steadily but not rolling. Don't pour boiling water directly onto dried elderflowers. What makes elderflower work is fragile. Boiling water drives it off before it can do anything. You'd end up building a preparation that loses the very thing you were trying to get. 2 tablespoons of fresh elderflowers, or 1 tablespoon dried, for every 8 ounces of water. Cover the cup while it steeps. This isn't optional. Stay with me. This is the detail most people skip. The steam that escapes an uncovered cup takes the useful part with it, and that's gone. A lid, a saucer, a small plate set on top. 10 to 15 minutes. Then drink it warm. Sweeten with honey if you like, but add the honey after the tea cools enough that you can hold your palm over it comfortably. Boiling water destroys what makes raw honey useful, and there's no reason to waste it. Drink it warm and then rest. Lie down. Pull a light sheet over you if the air is moving. This preparation needs you to stay still. This isn't a tea you drink while you're moving around the kitchen. You drink it. You rest. And in 10 to 20 minutes, you'll feel sweat beginning at the temples, along the hairline, at the upper lip. That's the preparation working. That's the engine turning over. The sweat is the point. The most common mistake I see is letting the tea cool before drinking it, or adding ice, because the idea of a hot drink in August feels wrong. That instinct will cost you the entire effect. The warmth of the drink is part of the preparation itself. A cold elderflower tea is pleasant, but it's not the same thing. You've lost the only part that matters, this time to cold instead of heat. There is one kind of pill that shuts your body's ability to sweat off completely. It gets prescribed more in summer than any other time of year. I'll name it before I close. I want to say something honest about Boneset. Eupatorium perfoliatum was in the United States Pharmacopoeia from 1820 to 1900, 80 years as officially recognized medicine. The traditional preparation documented in Appalachian tradition combined boneset with elderberry and willow bark, steeped together as a hot tea for a fever that laid you flat with bone pain. That's where its name came from, what the old people called break bone fever, which we now know as influenza. That formula worked on a specific thing, a bad fever, used briefly, a body already in crisis. In 2018, researchers found that boneset, when steeped in hot water, releases something that can harm the liver if used too long. That finding didn't exist when the 2011 Appalachian monographs were written. It exists now. Boneset is not a daily summer tonic. It's a plant for when fever is already on you. Used briefly, for active fever only. It's also not for pregnancy and not for children. The same preparation the pharmacopoeia trusted for fever care becomes something different when you drink it every day. The old people weren't drinking it every day. They reached for it when the fever came and set it down when the fever broke. That's the right use. I want to be clear about what this does and doesn't do. Most of what I share on here, my grandmother never wrote down. She just knew. Every week I put up a new one. Another plant, another preparation, another thing that almost did not make it through. If that matters to you, stick around. I would love to have you. Elderflower, yarrow, catnip, and lemon balm activate the body's evaporative cooling system. They're gentle enough for daily summer use. They work in conditions where the air is dry enough for sweat to evaporate off the skin, in high humidity. And I say this knowing full well that a hollow in August can be as wet as the inside of a cloud. The sweat can't evaporate, and the cooling effect is reduced or lost entirely. The plants haven't failed. The process just needs air movement or lower humidity to complete it. Sit where a breeze can reach you. These preparations don't treat heat stroke. If a person stops sweating in the heat, becomes confused, and their skin is hot and dry, that's a medical emergency. Call for help. Don't make tea. These are different situations, and I won't pretend otherwise. If you or someone you are caring for takes a medication for allergies, bladder control, sleep, or depression, check with your pharmacist before relying on sweating to cool down. Some of those medications block sweating. They can block it substantially. If the ability to sweat is already blocked by a medication, the hot tea won't compensate for it, and the risk of heat goes up. This is the most important safety note in everything I've said today. I'm not guessing at this. The kettle on this stove is the same one my mother used. August in the Hollow looks the same as it did 60 years ago. Still air, green ridge, a creek too low and slow to stir anything. She knew to put elderflowers in the kettle when the heat sat down on everything. She knew what the sweat was for. That jar on the shelf held something no cooling bill ever paid for, a way to live in the heat, without fighting your own body to do it. If you know what your grandmother grew, tell me in the comments.